to Moonhawk Studios Presents.
All right, everybody, welcome to Season 13 of Moonhawk Studios Presents, the luckiest season of all. I am your host, returning, Mac Paladin. With me in the studio, as always, is my good friend Adam.
At least it's not the loneliest number.
That would be one.
Yes.
Yes. Elemental Ogre is here.
Tertiary.
Snickering in the background is Petty Fan.
When you do double take to make sure you're actually broadcasting to the right channel.
It's like,
Good news, I am broadcasting to the right channel.
oh, great. And with the Funny Hat Brigade, we've got the Galix.
I am indeed here.
And Mega Man something something Blue Bomber Twilight Winter.
I still live.
Whose dulcet tones you heard at the top of the show with that lovely introduction. Thank you for that, sir.
No problem.
There's no real ceremony on this. I have decided not to bring back Sobe for this season. Love her to death, but it's kind of quiet. So don't think we really found her niche. I do apologize for that. And I'm sorry for everybody who's hearing about this for the first time on this broadcast. I am in talks with Melissa Sternenberg, who was our second runner-up in the process. She should be joining us in September, so we will not be chickless for very long. That sounded a lot better in my head.
Yeah, it's like, please never use that phrase again.
Are we
talking about gum?
Yeah, exactly. I have this fabulous sense of self-awareness. Unfortunately, it's about 4 steps behind me.
Locked in a closet somewhere.
Anyway, before I step in it further, let's get to the news.
All right.
Adam?
Let's see. News. Not much this week. The Fragments of Silicon show is going on in earnest, but that's at regular capacity. Let's see. The world continues to be absurdly insane. We're in the midst of developing a new program that will hopefully see a test launch here in a few weeks.
Yep.
It's like more on that in the weeks ahead. But
you just do a quick step to the left and do the time warp.
Yes. Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay, Ogre?
Let's see. Next week, starting Friday, we go on our annual vacation up to Lake Erie for the weekend. So that'll be fun. Nice to get out of the house and go up to the lake before summer ends. Except for some kids around the area who are apparently already back in school, but whatever.
Well, summer is a state of mind.
No, it's more of a state of, the seasonal changes and whatnot. But anyway.
I thought you only had 2 seasons in Ohio. Winter and construction.
Well, it is technically construction season, so...
Okay, there you go.
Let's see. Recordings are going fine. We finished up Blaster Master on Monday. Should be starting another small couple things here soon. Though, not next Monday, but the Monday after that, we're going to have to double up on recordings because that weekend will be Naka and Barry's wedding, and nothing's getting done on that Monday, I can tell you that much. So,
oh boy.
Man, what a bunch of babies. letting go of their let's playing duties for something as silly as a wedding.
Oh,
And-
trust me, they're already at the point that they're kind of going like, we should have just gone down to the courthouse.
That's the
I mean,
smart
they've
way
been
to do it.
Yeah, they've been together what, 6 years now?
I don't know. It kind of feels it's that realization that I don't even know how long you guys have been together. It just feels like you're just been together.
The kids grow up so fast.
Let's see. I have a blood donation tomorrow. For the first time in a couple of months. I tried a couple times last month, but due to constant donations and my iron lower than it should be, so have to wait that out to build up again. Because it's important that you have iron in your blood, or else bad things happens.
The vampires come out.
No, the vampires don't come out.
No, it's the oxygen doesn't get attached to your blood and get sent to the other organs. That's the bad thing.
Brains and hearts are overrated.
Let's see. Other than that, not much else going on. I still have my Story of Seasons game that I've been meaning to play slowly on pause for like a week now. I haven't even gotten past the tutorial. I keep getting caught up in Final Fantasy 14 because I'm so fucking close to Bahamut. I swear to God. I will get him, and then there will be a reckoning upon the world.
And then
Mostly
I
with
am
the
crew tank forever.
Mostly with the Garleans, because fuck those guys. And the Allagons, they're a bunch of assholes too.
Yeah, but aren't they dead? Supposedly.
That's up for debate half the time, really.
Yeah, that's why I said supposedly.
They either come back as clones or holograms, or they've been stuck in time stasis forever. Fuck, one of these days, we're just going to have an expansion that takes us back to Allagon, and we're the ones that accidentally causes the great earthquake that starts that Umbral era.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Bahamut is us.
Yeah. Wait, can I summon you? Other than that, that's pretty much it for me.
Alrighty. Teddy fan.
Oh, been playing a lot of Sonic Mania because, of course.
Well, of course.
Yeah, who would have thought the guy with Tails as his avatar would be a Sonic fan? Who knew?
Well, it does suggest that you're a Tails fan.
Yeah, well, aside from that, Friday or Thursday or whatever day it was, we got a letter from the city about our yard because apparently it's not up to their fucking standards. So,
Great.
Over the weekend, my dad and I have been, I guess, getting what we think needs done. They didn't tell us in the letter what they want done exactly.
Well, yeah, that would be
They
logical.
basically just said your yard's in violation, fix it by such and such date.
So they gave you the letter that shows a picture of somebody just wildly gesturing and saying, your yard, fix it.
Yeah. So it's like,
Okay.
hopefully we did what they want. I mean, I personally don't have, $300 to throw if they decide to give us a citation. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. Aside from that, not a whole lot's been going on.
All right. Golix?
Well, they've been painting the house, and of course, for the first few days, they were starting bright and early in the morning outside the window of yours truly, who is a PM person, because that's just the way it goes. I have also been playing Sonic Mania because I enjoy Sonic games, even if I'm terrible at them, and this is a pretty good one. I enjoyed watching the made publicly available 2-episode premiere of the new DuckTales cartoon, because that's a pretty cool thing.
Woo!
Yes. I would have done that, but you've instructed me not to sing, so I didn't.
I mean, we could probably go
but
into
it's
the
my
duck.
but it's my podcast, so there's nothing that can stop me from doing it.
I wasn't saying you couldn't. I'm just saying I'm just saying you're the only thing stopping me from.
I was gonna say we'd go into singing the DuckTales theme, but probably trigger about 80% of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that we'd lose our free viewers right now.
Or they'd be
Especially
in front of our
since
houses with pitchforks and flames.
But they'd have to know where we live.
Implying they don't already.
Yeah, full doxing in 5, 4, 3. Anyway,
other than that and stuff about current state of the world, not too much going on. Thankfully, I'm feeling better than I was yesterday when I had to leave work early and sleep for like 3 hours because I had a massive headache.
All right.
So,
yeah.
You guys and your health problems. All right, Twilight, you're up.
Well, let's see here. It's been raining on and off for the past few days. And next week, school will be starting back, so I'll be continuing with that on my morning drives to work. Hopefully it won't be bad. And then, let's see, and a few days ago, my mother's computer is starting to die on us. It's an old Windows XP machine. What was that?
Did somebody just start playing The Ring?
This is Mike Olsherman out here in the snowstorm, and my God, it's a snowstorm for the history books.
Okay, that'll be it from me.
Can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Aside from the blood gushing in my ear, yes.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, the big news for me since the brief hiatus is that episode 1 of Starship Moonhawk is going.
We were on hiatus.
Yeah, that's what that whole 3 weeks not doing a show is. The break between seasons. I feel like I'm getting nowhere here.
Yeah, that's normal for you, though, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Anyway,
You're quite a nowhere man, so.
Nowhere man. Anyway. Yeah. If anybody had tested me, I wouldn't have been able to make it through the rest of the lyrics. So. Oh man. So episode 1 of Starship Moonhawk is actually going to debut probably within the next 14 days.
Oh
and
man,
course,
that's only a fortnight.
Yes, it is. Indeed, it is. And that was one of the 16 answers I needed to get 100% on that quiz on Facebook. So I'm very proud of that. But very excited about that because we've been working on it since April. And funny story about that. We were trying to raise $30,000 in order to make the pilot episode of Space Destroyer Hunter. And instead we made the pilot episode of Starship Moonhawk on a budget of $500. So pretty impressed with that. We got some great voiceover actors, not the least of which is Skylar Davenport as Colonel Malaya, and James Larrabee just did an absolutely bang-up job as Torrance Coulson. And then Keith and I basically filled in about half a dozen miscellaneous voices that we just couldn't afford to hire out for. So be prepared for some voice modulation. Although I did actually manage to pull a pretty good Emperor out of my ass, and I don't mean Emperor Palpatine. Most people who heard it were like, "Wait, that was you?" So either that's a testimonial to my voice acting, or I was really having a lousy voice day.
Or
But
both.
it's going to clock in at about 20 minutes in length. We were going to make a movie in 7 parts, and the bottom line is that was impractical. So we decided to make a web series, because then it allows us to use the theme song as filler in every episode. No, but in order to make basically what I've decided is that the first 3 major story arcs in the comic series are going to be the basis of our entire first season, which will be 12 episodes. 13 if we can make Surrender. But Surrender is kind of vicious, so we'll play it by ear. But basically what we've done is we've created limited animations using the existing comic book artwork. And I think everybody will be quite impressed with this, because what Keith and Nathan Bonner have managed to pull off in Adobe After Effects are nothing short of amazing. Although I should say Nathan Bonner actually used Moho, which is the ridiculous renaming of Anime Studio.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually did quasi-real animation, and then what Keith did was create these phenomenal special effects shots with fully rendered planets and stars and moving text. So I don't know how many of you remember the show Jag, but they used to do this thing on Jag where whenever they went to a new location, they would say, like in the Coral Sea, 0327 hours or something like that, that kind of thing. We actually did our version of that, which was kind of cool because it gave us this kind of computerized animated text over, rather than doing Stan Lee-esque narration, which I actually wrote Stan Lee-esque narration into the first act of Starship Moonhawk, and I've regretted it ever since. Largely because I'm no Stan Lee. But it's actually very good, and I think everybody will be quite impressed when they see it. We've cobbled together the best of what was available, using both my artwork and some redone artwork from another artist. And hell, I even made an animation loop myself of somebody blinking. It's kind of fun. What else? I need to get some updates done on the comic itself, but yeah, I can't say enough about this animated episode, largely because we really need to hype up the fact that in order to make episode 2, oh right, I was going to explain it, the 5 episodes for the Mercadian Affair, 3 episodes to make a Made in the USA follow-up storyline, 1 episode for Surrender if we get the bonus, and I believe it was 4 episodes to finish off the season with a story I was writing called The Last Sentinel, which has not even come close to debuting at any point on the website. So, hell, that episode may get made before the actual comic comes out. We'll see how that goes. But it's very exciting. We're finally almost to the halfway point of Act 5 of the Mercadian Affair on the comic side of things. And that's important because we've basically come full circle after 10 years. This is where we were when I stopped. And so we're actually going to move forward for the first time since 2009. So very excited about that. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, to be honest with you. Do I have any book news? Nope, haven't written a word. So that's it. That's the 20-minute mark on the show here. All right, well, that's it for my news. Let's get to the main event. What you all really came here for, because you don't give a crap about what I have to say. All right, so our guest for tonight almost needs no introduction, but we're going to do it anyway because we're nerds like that. I'd like to bring onto the podcast one Ed Greenwood, creator of Forgotten Realms and a prolific fantasy writer. His credits are so numerous, I'm not sure I could list them all on this podcast. Ed, welcome to the program at last.
Hi. Glad to be here.
So, what got you started with all this? What was it that motivated you to become a fantasy writer?
Well, I was one of those things they called a child prodigy. At the tender age of 4, I was reading my way through every book in my father's den. And my father, like most book collectors, didn't have enough space for his books, so he built his own bookshelves, and things were filed by size.
So the heavy things were at the bottom?
Well, no, but a shelf had the same height. So The High White Forest by Ralph Allen, a novel of the Battle of the Bulge, which, by the way, has a hilarious, to a 4-year-old, 2-page scene of German undercover agents in a classroom trying to say the F word like Americans so that they will pass for American. Anyway, it's shelved right next to the complete Lord of the Rings in the original George Allen and Unwin hardcover, just because they were the same height. And there were all these great pulp paperbacks crammed along the ceiling. Give one to a friend in uniform. So I read everything, starting in there were everything from my father's radar, top secret hush hush stuff, to The Nude Said No. I spent my entire teenage years searching my father's study for The Nude Said Yes, and never found it. But I read everything, and every now and then something would grab me, and they were usually fantasies, the occasional space opera and science fiction. And I'd run upstairs, usually to my father's intense embarrassment, because it was usually an evening and I'd been dispatched downstairs to be out of the way, and he had a dinner party going on or something. And I would run up and say, Dad, this one's great. Where's the next one? And he would usually say, well, son, that author's been dead since the 1930s. So if you want to read the next one, you'll have to write it yourself. Oh, okay, I'd say. And I'd go pounding back down the stairs and start writing a sequel, which, of course, was horrible, derivative, and I ran out of steam after about, 15, 20 pages. But I was learning how to copy different, usually bad, writing styles. So by the time I was like 5 years old, I was writing my own P.G. Wodehouse Blanding stories, Kipling type stories, Robert E. Howard, Conan's, pastiches of bits of the Lord of the Rings. And so that's how I started.
Interesting.
That's pretty amazing, actually.
And when I was in public school, I once got sent down to the principal's office for plagiarizing Wodehouse. And I sat on the bench, and I was lucky as anything, because the principal came out and said, "Come in here." And I thought, uh-oh. And he said, "Where did you find this?" I said, "I didn't find it. I wrote it." And he said, No. Where did you find this? I know all the Blanding stories. This is an unpublished Blanding stories. And I said, "Yeah, I wrote it." And he said, "Just a minute." And he called my English teacher in, and he said, "You're not to give this guy any grief. Wow, this is amazing." And then he said, "Can I keep this?" So I mean, I faked Wodehouse enough to impress a guy who was a fan of Wodehouse. So, my career was set. No.
Of course.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's how I got started. I've been a writer. Well, I created the Forgotten Realms when I was about 5 years old, and I've been working on it ever since. Because I'm crazy.
Well, aren't we all just a little bit? I mean,
Well, yeah.
we have these worlds tumbling around in our minds. Doesn't leave a whole lot of room for anything else, does it?
True. Which explains the world, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now that all the nerds like us are running companies, Hollywood studios, governments.
So you started out on the Forgotten Realms very early. How did you get involved with actually publishing it so that it could become the game engine that we know today?
Well, okay, I started by publishing fictional short stories. Just I would write them and I would give them to my dad for his entertainment. And unbeknownst to me, or unbeknownst at the beginning, he would take them down to his workplace and duplicate them there. This is old enough that's before proper photocopiers and everything, and hand them around to his workplace colleagues, who'd say, "Oh, that's great. Tell the kid to write one with a sex scene in next time." And my father would say, "He's 6." You know. Oh well, there's no time like now to start the research. But so I was writing Forgotten Realms stuff from that age. But when D&D came along the first time, I read it. I thought, this is cool, but people are just going to argue about this. There's not enough to the rules. I'm talking about the original booklets. So I thought, okay, that's a cool idea, but it's storytelling around a table, and it's just going to devolve into an argument. I was still interested in it, and as Greyhawk and Eldritch Wizardry and so on came out, I purchased them all, because I thought this is full of cool ideas. But I wasn't really blown away until the Monster Manual came out, and I thought, oh, this is really cool, because now all the monsters of mythology are described and ranked against each other. So, if a dragon and a cockatrice go at it, you can tell what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Cool. And then the Player's Handbook came out, and it was Jack Vance's magic system, completely detailed. And it was like, oh, cool. Oh, this is perfect. Okay, so from now on, everything in the realms, I will rewrite and write in this style from now on to match this. I won't say things like, he cast fireball. I will still be writing fiction, but it will all match this, because what this is giving me is a framework of fairness as a writer. I can't, the old famous Western scene where he fires his 6-gun 42 times without reloading, I want to get away from that. So this rule system will be my backbone. You cast the spell, you forgot it out of your mind. You can't recast it until you study again. Okay, we have a built-in limitation. Good. I can make things work this way. This is what this weapon does. This is what this spell does. Cool. Okay, this will keep me fair. As a writer, I don't have to think about the mechanics of how things work. I can just concentrate on telling a good story using this as my armature, my skeleton. I wasn't then thinking of regular play sessions, but I started buying Dragon magazine and waiting, like everybody else was waiting, for the Dungeon Master's Guide. And issue 21, we got the tables that were going to be in the Dungeon Master's Guide, because Gary realized we were all impatiently waiting, and it was taking him forever to get that book out and preside over this company that was just mushrooming at the same time. Again, the bottleneck problem we can all face. So I started writing articles for Dragon magazine. I think the first one got published in issue 30, and I always thought it was a bit arrogant to say, "Hi, you don't know me, but my name's Ed Greenwood, and I thought of a new way of rolling dice that's better than all the ways that you were thinking of." I thought that's really pushy. And so I would use a mouthpiece character like Elminster, who also enabled me to be vague. If you say, "I'm going to speak to you as an omniscient dungeon master," I have to say there are 8 orcs in room 3, and their hit points are blah, blah, blah. And one of them has a ring of endless wishes hidden up his jumpers. I have to be specific.
But an in-universe character could be vague about stuff, either because they want to or because they don't know everything.
That's right. Yeah. Elminster can say, "It's rumored that there are some orcs in those ruins, but I don't put much stock in it myself. You can pull that thing. So you can suggest things to every dungeon master reading Dragon, and everybody read Dragon in those days, without the players also reading Dragon going, aha! So if we yell Thursday, the clicks fall over dead, because there it is in their monster write-up. I can just be vague about it. So that I started doing that. And I also thought it was fairer to my own players, because we'd started play. So that's around 1978, we're starting regular play. 1979 is when the articles start getting published. I thought it was fairer because we didn't bring stuff to the gaming table that if they read the article and read about this new monster or new magic item or new spell I put, in a thing that got published, they sort of vaguely knew about it, but they didn't have it in front of them at the gaming table. So that, I thought, was a pretty good analog for what their character might have heard or seen, but not metagaming, the people who sit there with the rule books and argue with the dungeon master. Well, it says here that you only get 5 rounds of,
I'm so tired
You see,
of twink.
yeah, we like to role play. In fact, a regular home realms session is closer to Monty Python than it is a combat game. We may not roll dice at all in a 4-hour game session, or we may roll them once or twice. It's mainly speaking in character, negotiating, using our local reputations and street cred as characters, investing in things, asking questions, figuring out, being part of intrigues and figuring out intrigues, because that's what my players preferred. They didn't necessarily want a dungeon crawl or combat. That didn't thrill them. They all were wargamers, and if they wanted to have wargaming stuff, they would sit down and do a war game.
Mm-hmm.
This was their storytelling fun, D&D. So this was their chance to go and walk around this fantasy world that I created and do things like become important big wheels in Waterdeep or in Shadowdale or wherever. And those were the 2 original foci of the 2 campaigns, Waterdeep and Shadowdale. But it started that way, and that's how it developed. So because I was publishing stuff in Dragon constantly, Kim Mohan, who had come on board as an assistant editor, invited me at an early Gen Con, and I can't remember which one. I think it was Gen Con 13. My first Gen Con was 8. My second one was 13. Third one was 17. And then I didn't miss a Gen Con for 30 years up until very recently. So I think it was 13 where Kim invited me to become a contributing editor, which meant he hoped that he could assign topics to me to fill in the holes. Because as an editor of a small magazine, he wanted to provide a balance in every issue. And that meant he had to have somebody he could call on and say, could you write something about this? Because otherwise I can't balance the issue. I've got, 5 monsters here. I got 6 articles on how to use a bow. I need some balance here. So I became a contributing editor, and I said, cool. Well, what do I get paid? And he said, that's the contributing part. But it was great fun because I got to write cool stuff. And then I understand from Kim, talking to Kim later, that he was vastly impressed when I wrote a Gates article on my own bat, which ended up appearing in issue 37, because he said, this is the first thing that has ever been submitted across my desk that has footnotes. I said, well, yeah, because I wanted to quote all this stuff and note all that. And he goes, that's cool. You're in, So, and that's how it started. That's how it became the juggernaut that it is today.
That is pretty amazing. All right, so we're going to round robin this here. I'm going to let the guys here geek out on you. So be prepared for the deluge. Who wants to start? And I'll rush in at once.
Mac, you're a bit in and out.
Yeah, your volume keeps going up and down, but I guess I can start. I guess when you started, I mean, it's gotten to the point where the campaign setting you created is like more or less the default, and there are so many other products, and I just, did you ever imagine that you'd have so much stuff based on it? And also, like, how does it feel to know that the stuff that you created and then everybody else is doing stuff with?
I love
Sorry,
it.
that wasn't very.
No, I love it
eloquent.
because remember I talked earlier about how Gary was the bottleneck, and we
Mhm.
kept waiting for the dungeons of Castle Greyhawk or Castle Greyhawk, and we waited and we waited, and before that we were waiting for the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the problem was one guy couldn't do all the stuff he wanted to do at once. Well, in the same way, for the realms, I was acutely aware that I would be the bottleneck. I was also acutely aware that if it was just me, it was going to be a lot narrower and less rich than when you have like 42 cooks in the kitchen. And yes, the 42 cooks in the kitchen can lead to the obvious screw ups. And we had one early on of inconsistencies creeping in. The princess of Cormyr, Alucer Nicasia, very quickly ended up with 3 different fates because she was in the hands of 3 different people. One of them out of house, 2 of them in house, and there was a sort of turf battle going on between books and games. And as a result, she ended up with 3 different things happened to her. So that possibility has always been there. But on the other hand, a lot of really cool and ingenious realms lore, particularly from freelancers Eric Logan Boyd and George Crashos, who both became really good friends of mine. They sort of made unofficial sideline avocation careers out of explaining away inconsistencies in clever ways by saying, oh, but you didn't realize that blah, blah, blah. And I would pop 3 or 4 pages of realms lore. And I love this. And yeah, it's not everybody who gets a chance to create something that sort of becomes immortal and will go on no matter what. I mean, even if they stop publishing it, because they have on several occasions, and it just keeps rolling along.
Well, yeah, one
Because-
of the nice things about role-playing games is you don't have to play in the setting they give you. You can make up your own or base it on something that was in an older edition that isn't in this edition or whatever.
Yeah, and to me, it's wonderful because I've got to travel the world and meet all sorts of people, and new friends is what they become, because of something I started working on when I was a little kid. So it doesn't, although it is a lot of work because I work on it every day. It doesn't seem like a lot of work because it's what I do. It's like breathing, It's like when your mom says, go and brush your teeth. Okay, you just do it. Later on, you just do it out of habit. Well, in the same way, I've been working on the realms all the time. Right now, because the realms has sort of become the default setting and the novel line has backpedaled and the game line has gone down a bit, I have more time. So I'm now starting my own publishing thing, the Ed Greenwood Group, and we're doing 30 plus settings. And what we're doing is everything that I've spiked, every idea I've put on the back burner on the spike, the journalistic term, because we used to have real spikes on our desk.
Yep.
Which you drive your hand on. But I mean, you would take pieces of paper and go boom on the spike. Well, these are all ideas that just occurred to me that won't work in the realms, like a Flash Gordon-like space opera idea, or a urban fantasy idea, or a Cthulhu horror idea that just won't work in the realms. But that would be really cool to explore that. So I put the idea aside. Well, now I'm going through all the other ideas, and I'm going to do 30 odd settings, all in different genres. So there's going to be a steampunk. There's going to be a urban horror. It's called Helma. It's out now. There's going to be, what if I was doing the realms, but low magic and controlled magic rather than tons of magic, and very few gods instead of tons of gods, and getting away from the D&D rules and races. And that's out now too, and it's called Storm Talons. And I'm also doing the Realms at TEG, which the Realms at the Ed Greenwood Group, which doesn't mean we're publishing ourselves. We're publishing at the Dungeon Masters Guild like everybody else. But it's my chance to collaborate with people who aren't the in-house designers at Wizards, but just have always wanted to write and get published in the realms, and they sort of don't know where to start. Those who know where to start can just write anything at Dungeon Masters Guild that doesn't offend against the rules and guidelines. that Wizards has put there. But someone who's, has a little trepidation about dipping their toe in the realms, we're going to run contests every year, and then I will collaborate with them on something in the realms. And what I'm doing right now is I'm writing these little tales of Mert, the original Realms character, where he bops all over the realms. I'm staying out of the way of both the Wizards of the Coast mainline products and the Adventurers League areas. And so I'm going to little corners of the realms we haven't detailed in a long time or ever. So the little gaps in the map. And Mert goes there like a sort of James Bond character carrying out a mission for Laryl. And I write a little story, and then I shove all the rules and realms lore thing in with the story, so it isn't just fiction. And then there will be an accompanying adventure, a 5th edition D&D adventure that comes out in the same spot. And I will work with somebody else collaborating on an adventure in the same spot. So Dungeon Masters who aren't interested in that particular locale or don't like what we do, they can just ignore it. But those of them who have always wanted to go there, and it's just a name on a map and we haven't filled it in, oh good, now there's something that details it. As you can tell, I can just talk all night on it.
Yeah, no, that's
blah,
cool, and it must be nice to have time to work on some of your other ideas, because certainly being the one person in charge of, that's sort of the idea behind a setting, that can be a lot of work.
Oh yes, it is a lot of work. I am stone cold crazy. It still is a lot of work. I mean, I'm still in contact with most of the designers, both freelance and at WotC, who are working on the realms, and we talk about things like, the coins in use and stuff, or styles of underwear being worn by characters in this kingdom, because if you strip a body in order to get a disguise for your player character to put on, it may become important.
Yeah, are they wearing a loincloth? Do they have under trousers? Is it some kind of...
Do they have lots of straps with little weapons and doodads on underneath their clothing? If so, what are they? Do I put them on? Or are they poisonous to me? Are they weapons? I mean, is it something that somebody's going to say, show me your Zoblob? And you go, what's a Zoblob? And he gestures at your torso and you go, oh, the stuff I left on the body. Or are you going to go, I was smart enough to tuck all that stuff. So you just sort of unbutton and you go, ta-da! And he goes, oh, okay. And you pass inspection or whatever. I mean, so little details that may never, ever make it into a product because somebody says, it's not appropriate for a family product, or that isn't where we're going with this, or we just don't have page count or whatever. We think them through so there aren't logic gaps. In the same way that if you were an old master painter, you probably painted your subject nude and then painted clothes over them. Because if you didn't, and there are examples hanging in galleries around the world of old masters that you can tell, the head and shoulders do not match the hips. They are they're bent in different directions because somebody didn't paint the figure.
Yeah, it's easy to get the proportions and stuff.
Oh, the Baroque period.
Yes. It's Baroque. Yes. Well,
yes, perfect.
So we do all these little details, even if they don't make it into because we need to know. I mean, you think, yeah, but who cares? Or none of this game isn't about that. But you can be sure that back in the day of the old TSR days, they had huge arguments about how this species of dragon reproduces, the eggs, how heavy they are, how fragile they are, what color they are. Do they imprint on whoever's holding the egg when it cracks? Mommy, whatever.
Because it's gonna come up if you're playing with people.
You bet. Somebody at a gaming table somewhere. So whether you put it in the product at all, you should think it all through so it's all logical so that what you actually publish fits with all that. Everything's consistent. And when somebody asks the question at a panel at Gen Con or a letter to the editor in Dragon or something, the person doesn't go, I don't know. We don't think about it. No. You want the answer to be, well, now that you've asked, here you go. You know, and everybody goes, wow, it's almost like they know what they're doing.
It's lovely to hear all this because it reaffirms in my mind that I'm only insane in the literal sense for going through all this stuff.
Sure, yes. And isn't it lovely to think that there are men and women and boys and girls and significant others all around the world who think about dragon eggs and other stuff in exacting detail. And then you think they could be doing something more productive with their lives. And then you think, isn't it wonderful that they aren't? That they're thinking about this stuff instead. Because this is what makes life worth living. Woo-ha-ha.
Exactly. Although in my case, it's trying to explain the tachyon cannon.
It's like, yes, well, of course.
It's like, guys, it doesn't actually fire tachyons. That's actually impossible.
Just think of it as a rail gun.
Yeah, well, we won't get into that. That'll be a never-ending conversation.
but okay, let me just hand you this. James H. Smits, great science fiction writer, long dead. In the Witches of Karis, his classic, he has a ship that's equipped with Nova guns. What are Nova guns?
Do they literally shoot exploding stars at them?
Well, all we know is you can set your Nova guns, 2 of them, aimed at a stationary target, and if it moves, the guns will go off. That's all we... and the fact that they do blue and white lightnings when they fire in deep space. Those are the only 2 things. And they're old and outmoded, and they could have had the ship bristling with battle turrets for the cost it took the armorer to go over the aging Nova guns. That's literally all we know by the end of this long classic novel about the Nova guns. But boy, did they sound cool. So there's your stopgap thing. Tachyon, they're Nova guns.
Well, it's tachyon energy. And then I had some physicists trying to argue with me, and I said, you do realize that I consulted with a physicist before I developed this thing, right? And they're like, well, yeah.
My theoretical physics are at least as good as your theoretical physics.
Yeah, they're all theoretical.
All I'm saying is, if you have a problem with tachyon-based technology, you probably should have brought that up in 1974 when Leiji Matsumoto put it out in Space Battleship Yamato. I'm just saying, you know.
Yeah. But you see, my father was a physicist, and as he used to say, son, you know how they'd always tell you mathematics is a language and you can prove anything by just writing the right equation? And I said, oh, you mean like anti-gravity, and then you jump off a skyscraper and on your way down you're trying to disprove it so you won't splatter? And he goes, that's exactly right. Anything you do in physics, Heisenberg notwithstanding, you can prove anything else. Oh, really? So in other words, Dad, what you're telling me is you have a career out of bullshitting. He goes, that's right, so do you. You write about swords and dragons and occasionally ray guns, and I write about them as a scientist, so therefore I have a job.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my check.
Yes. Well, me too.
Exactly.
Yes, that's the one myth I want to dispel. Those of you who think, oh, I'm going to become a game designer and be worth millions. No, you're not.
You're you might be a footnote in Dragon magazine.
Yes. Be the guy who is a landlord who rents rooms to the game designers, and you have a better chance of making moolah out of this. But you won't have as much fun as the designers who come up with cool things that we play with.
Amazing. I love it. All right. Didn't mean to derail that. Let's keep going. We got some time.
I was trying to shut up because I thought, oh my God, I'm going to run them out of time going blah, blah, blah.
No, we got about 10 minutes left. So let's make good on this. Guys, what do you got? Come on.
Let's not always see the same hands.
I thought I had a pretty good setup here. You know, I was like, all right, this is great. I get to talk to get to talk to a fellow fantasy writer. This is rad. And he told me everything I wanted to know in the first 15 minutes. But you see, the other thing we try not to do on the show is ask.
Go ahead. What?
Oh,
what
no. I was going to say, we try not to ask asinine questions like, how do you make money off of this? Or
The obvious answer is he sells it, and people buy it.
Well, there are writers. You see, I'm up in Canada. Smaller pool of writers we can get to. There is one writer, whom I shall not name, who writes for individual patrons or clients to give them what they want to read for sexual satisfaction.
Oh my.
On the patron model, from the 15 or 1600s, they specify what they want and she writes it. And that is one way of making money out of things. Another way of making money out of things is to write speeches for politicians.
Ooh. God, I'd rather write porn. Oh, wait, I do.
and your typical speech is fantasy. We have jokes up in Canada that we would parody one of our ex-prime ministers. His speech would be, nice thing, empty promise, love this job. Which is really what a speech is, but there are also there are apocryphal stories where somebody has written an absolutely wonderful speech with full of hellfire and damnation and painting wonderful gilded castles in the air, and it's 15 pages long, the speech, and you turn to about page 8 and it's blank except for the words, from now on you're on your own, you old buzzard. And the rest of the speech.
Oh, I love it.
Anyway, but yes,
that was their last day as a speechwriter.
That's right. They were quitting and going. So it was like, yeah, and that was their farewell middle finger, But you don't do it for the money. You do it to eat, yes, but you do it because this is what we love doing. I mean, we could make a lot more money being bankers or lawyers or property developers or speculators, but none of that stuff is as fun as creating ideas, dreams that can inspire people can fall in love with. People can come up to you at conventions and beg for you to write more.
Yeah.
And that's not something that happens if you're a lawyer. Oh, I so loved your defense brief. Could you defend me again?
Well, with any luck, I won't have to.
Yes. I mean, it's not something that you expect, Anyway, but no, I get to do something I love, and it's when you see little boys and girls at a convention dressed as characters you created, or people bring their little bundle of joy up for you to meet because they've named their child after a character you created, and you go, wow.
Yep.
I do rule the universe. Just nobody knows it, and they're not paying me, but I do.
Yeah, Starship Moonhawk is one of those things. I'm like, I wrote it because I thought to myself, oh, gee whiz, I got this whole science fiction thing locked up, and then I realized that my hot take wasn't nearly as hot as everybody else's hot take, and but actually having like one or two people at a sci-fi convention actually recognize me for it is pretty gratifying. Although, unfortunately, more frequently, they remember me for the fact that I wrote a I Dream of Jeannie parody the way everybody wanted to see I Dream of Jeannie, nudge wink.
Ooh, interest me strangely. No, but and the other cool thing is you get to collaborate. That's why I'm doing this at Greenwood group thing. That's what I did on the Realms for years. And, that's what you do when you're doing your science fiction thing. It isn't just you. Other people act the other voice. You get to play. And that's something that, some of us did a lot of when we were really young and in the sandbox or down at the swimming hole or out in the woods or doing something that our parents didn't want us to do and getting dirty, but we were playing. And then we get told that's kid stuff and you've got to grow up and be serious now and go and learn things and earn money and everything. And you stop playing. And it's so much fun to be a part of something where you get to play. Hey,
Yeah.
let's go play.
Spent the last 17 years still trying to disprove my father when he says, "You'll never make any money off of this, son. Why don't you go get a real job?" And I'm like, "It is a real job, Dad."
It is. Now, what you didn't do was start a Hollywood studio.
Oh, well, I'm working on that now.
Yeah. You see, if you were worth billions, and you bought your local baseball and football teams, and said your dad's, see now.
See? Well, we'll give it a few more years. Procon Tompolis Studios LLC is going to be the next big thing. Everybody's going to see.
Uh-huh. There you go. Yes.
My dad was already impressed by he's like, "Oh, well, you actually have a label and a logo. Well, now, all right." And
Yes.
I'm like, "Dad, stop humoring me."
Yeah, it'll be the next big thing, or we'll see you mumbling like a crazy man on the side of the road.
He's like, "Look, just having a logo type that you made out of construction paper and Elmer's glue and put on your wall does not make you a publishing house." And I'm like, "But Dad."
Yeah, but you see, that's always your hardest audience to impress. It's always going to be, because they just think of you as you.
I always tell people this when they ask me for advice on this, and it sounds a lot like what you just said, but I'm going to paraphrase. The best advice I've ever given as a novelist is write what you love and make sure that you have a support system. Because if you don't have anybody singing your praises, that's probably the most crushing thing about being a novelist, is that you don't have anybody in your corner.
Mm-hmm.
So it's make sure you've got your cheerleading section, even if it's your mom or your dad or a cousin or brother or sister, whatever. Just get your cheering section lined up, because you need that boost.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Or have a name that could be the other gender, and then you'll get all those embarrassing fan letters from people who want to marry you. Tracy Hickman got that for years, of all the guys thinking he was a gal because his name was Tracy.
Oh man, yeah, no chance of that with me.
yeah. Well, whenever he was feeling down, he could open up one of the more flowery scented letters and have a moment of feeling really good.
Listen, I should point out at this point that it is not uncommon for us as role players to. Okay, I'm going to stop right there.
Yes. Yeah. Pull back from the brink of the precipice on that one. Yeah. Stylish recovery.
It's like Mac. Why do you always play female characters in Champions Online? I'll thank you not to pry into my business.
something staring at for hundreds of hours and moving on.
Yeah, something catfishing. I don't know. Oh boy, fun times.
Why are you wearing pink scanties? I have sensitive skin.
Exactly. My psoriasis was acting up, and I just I felt more comfortable with the tiara. All right.
Yeah.
Ed, this has been great so far. Let me give you an opportunity real quick here to plug something that may be coming up that you want to let everybody know about.
Oh boy. Well,
yes, add another hour to the podcast.
Okay, that's fine with me. I'll just sit back here and listen.
Okay, so there's the usual stuff you know about from Wizards, Xanathar's Guide to Everything and Tomb of Annihilation, and there are other things coming after that I can't talk about yet. And at the same time, I'm doing this at Greenwood group thing on the side, and in November at Gamehole Con, and my wife is somewhat frail, and I am her nurse now, so I stay home a lot. I'm missing Gen Con right now, obviously. But so I tend to go to conventions that I can get to and back in a day, with one exception. Every year I go to Gamehole Con in November in Madison. And at Gamehole Con, we will be relaunching Helmaw, Storm Talons, and two new settings. Well, one of them is not new, the Realms at Teg, and Folklore of the Affliction, which is also a game from Greenbrier Games, which is created by two gentlemen who call themselves Twin Fire Games. So this is not our setting. I'm just writing fiction to go with it, and so are some of my other Teg creators. And it's a sort of how shall I put this? Family friendly horror. Okay. Think of the Black Forest. Think of Hansel and Gretel. Think of werewolves and stuff. But think of it that way. So it is
the Brothers Grimm.
Yes, yeah, but a little lighter on the sex and gratuitous blood and guts, but still scare the pants off you. Okay, so that's what that setting is, and it is as a board game. They had a very successful Kickstarter. It's going to be a box full of gorgeous minis, and it's a board game that has role-playing elements, which is what fascinated me. So I'm just writing a novel, and Nick Fife, who is our lore guardian at the Ed Greenwood Group for Folklore of the Affliction, is writing short stories about a character. Ooh, I mustn't say anything more yet. Anyway, that will all come out at GameholeCon. And what we intend to do every year is launch new settings when they're ready until we get all 30 of our settings out. And there are settings like a modern mysteries, with murder mysteries, only set in a Renaissance fair-like traveling carnival show, where everybody's dressed as knights and whatever medieval, but somebody's murdering them. And it's almost certainly got to be somebody inside the show. And we'll be doing a romance. We'll be doing everything. Science fiction in all 3 different flavors: space opera, hard SF, and down the middle wacky. And it's we're doing this to have fun, and we're also doing it in what we call a transmedia way. If we have a character wearing a cool trench coat, we want to make the trench coat so you can buy it. And if one person wants it, it's going to cost them maybe almost $1,000 or a couple of $100. If 20 people buy it, okay, we'll get a factory to make them, and the price will drop down, and so on. And we can do mass production kitschy stuff too, if enough people want little stuff. But the whole idea is, and we get it out in as many languages as possible all around the world. So if 5 people like it, 5 people like it. If 20 people like it, we want to build our settings so that you can always go into this sort of imaginary world and have fun. And we will have poetry, we will have short stories, we will have novels, and written by all sorts of different people. And if people like a particular character and they buy enough of it, then the person writing that novel has an incentive to write a sequel. They may want to write the sequel just for themselves. They may say, I don't care if only my mom wants to buy it. I'm going to want to write this, and we'll put it out. And so therefore, we will be creating lots and lots of little worlds tied to different genres for people to, fall in love with if they want to. In the same way that Star Trek and Star Wars and Middle-earth and Game of Thrones and the Realms have generated loyal fandom, we're going to try and do it for all sorts of different settings in all sorts of different genres and give people new playgrounds just for fun. I should be, growing old and sitting there sipping my beer going, young people these days. But instead, it's more fun to do this because I get to collaborate with all of the young people on all these little things. If they like a project, I get to, bad ideas back and forth with them, right? And we'll have role-playing adventures to go with all of this stuff. And we'll probably have little board games, little simple, fast-playing board games for everything. Woo-ha-ha!
Outstanding. I feel like we barely just scratched the surface. So what I'm going to say is this, Ed. I'm going to say that this episode tonight was a fine introduction to you and your works. I think we need to have you back on the show at some point in the future, maybe later this season or next, so that way we can talk some more about the nuts and bolts of Elminster and some of your other works, because I've really enjoyed this. I have to say that.
Hey, twist my rubber arm.
All right, folks, that's Ed Greenwood. Check him out at officeedgreenwood.com, and be sure to check out his myriad works. Of course, like I said, so easy to find your stuff on the internet. You're so prolific, and that's just fantastic. I absolutely adore this.
I can't stop myself.
Please don't.
Okay.
Please don't stop. All right, Ed, thank you so much for being on the program and taking time out for us tonight. We will have you back. I gotta say that.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, Petty Fan informs me that we do not have a guest for next week. Shame.
Actually, we do.
Oh, Adams, please save the day.
No, Petty Fan. It's a Final Fantasy 14 guest.
That's that's the week after next.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it is?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they had to shift on me. They're now the 30th.
Oh.
All right. Well, if we come up with something at the last possible moment, I will probably try to post it either on the website or at least on my Facebook page. As I said, I'm courting some voiceover artists to join us on the podcast, so I may. Actually, I owe a spot to David J.G. Doyle, so I think that maybe if he's not busy, he's been on a perpetual honeymoon for like 2 months now, so. We'll see if I can break him away from that and get him on the podcast. But until then, we'll figure that out. Now, tell us about the week after.
The week after, we are having a YouTuber who goes by Zepladine. She makes like machinima type videos for Final Fantasy 14.
Okay.
So yeah, she's kind of a riot, so it's going to be interesting. The only thing I'm not sure about is she's a little bit iffy on the time because she lives in the Ukraine.
Well, we'll try not
That's
to
a
have
place.
we'll try not to have any delays whatsoever.
Yeah. So I'm going to try and make sure she has the time right as well because 10 p.m. Central and 10 p.m. Ukraine time are two very, very different things.
Radically so, yes. All right. Well, that should be fun. I'll make sure to bone up on that, as they say. But yeah. Again, thanks, Ed. Thanks for being on the podcast. And
Thank you. My pleasure.
Absolutely. And well, that's it for this week, folks. Be sure to check out our homepage and all that stuff as we get rolling on season 13 of Moonhawk Studios Presents. Until next time, I am your host, Mac Paladin, saying thanks for listening and stay safe out there, kids.